How one woman destroyed Belgium's golden generation. One of football's mysteries of recent times is how Belgium's golden generation failed consistently at major international tournaments over a decade-long period while sitting atop of Coca-Cola FIFA rankings year after year. This period included 3 FIFA World Cup appearances, 2 Euros tournaments and 2 Nations League campaigns. And in all of them bar one, it seemed as though Belgium's golden generation, led by Captain Eden Hazard, Kevin De Bruyne, Thibaut Courtois, Romelu Lukaku, among others, were built only for qualifiers and friendly matches, as every time the stakes were higher at tournaments, these stars somehow managed not to shine brighter enough. But of course, the excuses always did pour in, and head coach Roberto Martinez was usually the one getting all the stick for his apparent tactical deficiencies. Whatever the case, Martinez had his flaws, but there was only little he could do, as Belgium's real problems were deep-rooted in a cheating scandal from way back 2014. Yep, a scandal that involved goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois and midfielder Kevin De Bruyne destabilized the Red Devils' dressing room for a decade and even created petty conflicts in camp that eventually blew up in Qatar. Recall the Red Devils' last 2 abysmal international tournament showings, where they crashed out of the 2022 FIFA World Cup at only the group stages, and a year later, failed to make the Nations League finals after losing to a Netherlands team that was in transition. Star midfielder Kevin De Bruyne made matters worse with his bizarre post-match comments that the media expected too much from Belgium, who, in his opinion, were nothing more than just a small nation. De Bruyne's comments came as a shock to the global football community, as many had picked genuine interest in Belgium's rise in international football. But with this story that I am going to tell you shortly about Belgium's golden generation, you might in the end tend to agree with De Bruyne. I mean, if a team that truly had world-class players in every position on the field could still be in their feelings over mistakes 2 players made as boys, then certainly we did expect too much from them after all. Now to the beginning of Belgium's woes I was telling you all about. The year is 2014, and Kevin De Bruyne's girlfriend at the time, Caroline Lanen, had just dropped a bomb that she had cheated with goalkeeper Thibaut Courtois from a couple of years before, as payback for De Bruyne's own infidelity. Apparently, De Bruyne had come clean with Caroline some time back about his own unfaithfulness in the past, which saw him take Caroline's best friend to bed. De Bruyne had hoped his honesty would save both his remorseful face and his 3-year-old relationship, but how wrong was he? Not only did Caroline prove she was the type you would rather pamper with lies, but also, she was more than capable of evil. With plans of revenge already in her mind, Caroline set her holiday destination to Spain under the pretext that she was going to visit a friend. De Bruyne, who had become a little more lenient with his girlfriend, did not hesitate to allow Caroline go, even though they were both stationed in Germany. De Bruyne was on loan with Werder Bremen from Chelsea at the time. And it was in Spain that Caroline set her grand plan to motion. Upon reaching Spain, Caroline hooked up with Thibaut Courtois, who was very close friends with De Bruyne at the time, and lured him into bed. Having successfully concealed the scandal from De Bruyne for close to 2 years, it was in 2014, a World Cup year, that Caroline strategically decided to go public with the news. Courtois and De Bruyne had both been called up to the Belgium national team ahead of the World Cup in Brazil, and then this bomb actually dropped from nowhere. And as you would imagine, there is no betrayal in sports as painful as a teammate banging your girlfriend behind your back. This is actually worse than that teammate snatching the girl completely, to be honest. Consequently, great was the enmity this scandal created between Courtois and De Bruyne that the two simply could no longer stand each other. The team's disciplinary code was totally broken. And in an attempt to deal with the conflict in camp, Belgium National Team, led by manager Marc Wilmots, considered dropping Courtois from the team, but the guilt of denying his country one of the top shot stoppers in their posts weighed too heavy on De Bruyne, who vouched for Courtois to stay. And that was a very bad call. The whole team, in fact, needed time to process the whole incident, but they were denied that, as those on De Bruyne's side could not stand Courtois no more. Yet they all pretended that everything was fine. Then came the World Cup tournament. Though tipped to do many great things, Belgium's golden generation went only as far as the quarter-finals of the 2014 FIFA World Cup in Brazil. And guess what? They blamed it on inexperience, as most of the players on the team were just playing their first major international tournament. Okay, fair enough. But it was the same story 2 years later in France, as a disappointing Euros campaign saw Belgium crash out at the quarter-final stage after shockingly losing to Wales. Makes you wonder that if the disruptive consequences of teammates' conflicts were oblivious in the past, then they certainly were clear now for De Bruyne, Courtois and the whole team to learn from. But no, that did not happen. Fractions in the team were still not on talking terms, and indiscipline continued to plague the team. Coming back to Caroline, you just feel she must have definitely known where and how to hit De Bruyne hard with her payback. Recounting her one-night affair with Courtois, Caroline said Courtois gave her one night she had sorely missed for 3 years with De Bruyne. She added, "With Thibaut, I could have good conversations, and he also cooked nicely for me, such a thing Kevin never did. And then we clicked. How do you even deal with such extreme levels of betrayal?" The disjointed Red Devils of Belgium gave it another go at the 2018 FIFA World Cup in Russia. After convincingly winning all 3 group stage games, their old demons seemed to have caught up with them, as they underwhelmingly went down 2-0 to Japan in the second half of the round 16 tie. But head coach Roberto Martinez proved he had some tricks up his sleeves, as his late changes sparked a Belgium comeback to win the game 3-2 in the dying minutes. They went on to beat Brazil in quarter-final, breaking their quarter-final curse, but were made to settle for a third-place finish after losing 1-0 to eventual winners France in the semi-final. Comparably, Russia 2018 was a huge success for Belgium, and thousands flooded the city square to give their bronze medalists a rousing welcome. This was a monumental day in Belgian football history, but the players knew they could have gone all the way with just a little more push. Nonetheless, this golden generation had one more World Cup campaign left in them, and they vowed to go for it when the time arrived. Before that was the European Championships that was co-hosted by multiple nations including Italy and England. And here, Belgium faced real problems. You see, for a golden generation, you need your star players to be playing consistently at the highest level, something that Belgium always had. But before the Euros in 2020, Captain Eden Hazard, who was unanimously their game changer, was struggling with whole lots, from persistent ankle injuries to losing his club form and then having to pull out of the final man squad altogether. Goalkeeper Courtois had also just signed for Madrid and was now looking to find his feet and form. Not to talk of midfielder De Bruyne, who was struggling with his own injuries. The reality of the issue was, striker Romelu Lukaku, who was with Inter, was the only one in top form ahead of that particular tournament, as the other top players were either now playing lower leagues football or had become only as good for the bench. With the absence of inspirational captain Eden Hazard to control the dressing room with his jokes and free spirit, and of course, win them big games, the Belgian Red Devils' depleted squad and broken spirits failed to build on the successful World Cup in Russia, settling for yet another quarter-final finish in the Euros. Not good enough for a team that won bronze at the World Cup only 4 years ago. It is after this campaign that reality started dawning on everyone that perhaps Belgium's golden era was already over. But disappointingly, they were the last ones to notice, and they would be given their harshest reality check ever in Qatar 4 years later. In Qatar, Belgium's golden generation would bow out of the FIFA World Cup in most humiliating manner, as they failed to win a single game convincingly all tournament. And this is where their off-field issues blew up in their faces real big. Apparently, the Courtois De Bruyne issue had over the years birthed a disturbing phenomenon in camp where players were at conflict with one another. When two players had a simple misunderstanding, rather than sort it out amicably as men, they resorted to harboring grudges in themselves, and this, is a real killer of teamwork. Indiscipline at the Red Devils camp would later create a bigger mess of a situation where the transition from the failed golden generation to the promising new generation was not smooth enough. Normally, young and new players would stay patient and wait for their opportunities, but here, new players like Leandro Trossard felt so entitled to a starting spot because he was on form at his club. And could you blame him at all? This was basically the height of it all. Golden generations are meant to change the game for good. Spain's golden generation won the Euros back-to-back in 2008 and 2012, and then sealed it with a World Cup trophy in 2010. Same with Germany's golden generation, who won the 2014 World Cup on South American soil. But what did Belgium's golden generation win? Nothing. And just like how most great men and empires fell in history, a woman was at the center of it all.